Recently, I was rereading the Federalist Papers, and one of the things that I was really struck by is the founders. These are the papers, obviously, that were written to sell the Constitution to the public, and the founders just foresaw everything because they knew so much about human nature. They knew where the corruption would come in. They knew where the arguments would be. They were just amazing. But one thing they did not foresee is they did not foresee the invention of television. I was thinking this as I was watching it. Television, and now, of course, social media and the internet and all those things, because they assumed that our loyalties would remain close to our localities, close to the state. They didn't count on the effect on the imagination that television was going to have in bringing us all together and making the president the center of our national idea instead of our state, instead of the governor, instead of worried what's happening in our schools and in our towns and in our states and defending our state's right to make decisions. We're now so focused. I mean, we wake up and go to sleep when we're thinking about politics, thinking about the president of the United States. And that's only one thing that happened. You know, one of the great turning points in American politics was when in 1960, Richard Nixon debated John F. Kennedy, and it was a turning point toward the left. It was a turning point away from reason and toward emotion. A society that lives by images is a stupid society, a shallow society. In the Middle Ages, the world was divided between people who were literate, the elites, and most of the people were illiterate, and that's why there were such beautiful pictures and so many pictures in churches. It was the gospel of the illiterate. It was things that people could look at to get the stories. People who live by images live a shallow and emotional life. People who live by words live a life that could be, at least, governed by thought and reason. So obviously we know that I think this is a cliche, but I think it's also true that leftism is an emotional appeal. It's an appeal to the emotions, whereas the right-wingers sometimes are too reasonable and too logic-based, but they are more reasonable and logic-based, so they're going to be more involved with words. The minute things became televised, the left took a distinct advantage. The minute things became about images. But television and the media has also done something else. It's also emphasized extreme ideas. Why? Because it is much more fun to turn on TV and hear one guy yelling that MS-13 is invading your country to rape your children and the other guy yelling racist, 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 than it is to hear two people saying, well, look, obviously we've got to restore the borders. We've got to secure the borders. How do we go about doing that? What's your policy and why? And here's mine, okay? It is simply better clickbait to have people talking about extremes. When you have somebody come on and say men and women are the same, there's no difference between men and women, and you think there is, you're sexist. That makes you outraged. You're going to watch something that makes you outraged. You're not going to watch if people start to talk about in rational terms the scientific information which increasingly shows that there are deep and abiding differences between men and women, and here is what they are. But of course, even though there are deep abiding differences between two classes of people, they may not affect you as an individual. All that stuff is nuanced and shaded, and it just doesn't work on television. Television imagery is stupid. It is shallow. It's affecting and it is moving, but it gets to your heart very easily. The images go right to your heart. Words have to work their way there through your mind. And that is the change that the media has wrought. We are living in a society where we are being taught to be illiterate and to judge things on the way they look.